The story takes place in 1959 in a small town called Suburbicon. In just over a decade, the town has developed dramatically into a lively community of 60,000 residents who are drawn to the exquisite lifestyle. One bright morning, a mailman goes around the neighborhood delivering mail as usual. He goes to meet the newly arrived mayor's family, who is African American. Upon reaching there, he's taken aback to see Mrs. Mayers because he assumed she was white. However, he welcomes her to the city and leaves, and later informs the neighbors about her. Meanwhile, the other residents are shocked to discover that their new neighbors are black. Later, a community meeting is organized in which angry white males demand that the mayor's family be evicted from the town due to their race. A petition is being circulated among the citizens of the town to force the mayor's family to leave. Rose Lodge, a neighbor of the mayor's family who is a paraplegic, is spending the day with her twin sister Margaret and her son Nicky. Rose expresses concern that their property value may fall now due to the mayor's family, but Margaret is more inclined to racial integration. She even encourages Nicky to go play baseball with the mayor's son, Andy. Nicky hesitantly approaches Andy and offers to play baseball with him, while other neighbors watch with curiosity. Later that night, Nicky's father, Gardner, comes to his room with a strange man and takes him downstairs. Turns out there are robbers inside his house. When they reach the living room, he sees his mother and aunt and the two robbers named Sloan and Lewis. After forcing Gardner to make drinks for them, Sloan asks Rose how she became paralyzed, to which she responds that she and her husband were in a car accident. Then the two robbers tie all of the family members to the table and knock them out with chloroform rags. This is a movie based in late 1950s America. Suburbicon is a typical quiet American town, but when an African American family moves into the neighborhood, the bigoted community goes out of its way to force them to leave. At roughly the same time, two strangers break into the home of their neighbors, Gardner and Rose, and tie up the family. This ignites a series of sinister consequences for the seemingly normal family. Now back to the video. Nicky wakes up safely in the hospital and sees his father and Aunt Margaret discussing with the doctor. He's informed that his mother never regained consciousness as a result of the overdose. Later, Rose's funeral is held, and Nicky is still too shocked to openly mourn for his mother. People in town offer their condolences, while quietly implying that the mayor's family may have been involved. To console the grieving child, Rose's brother, Mitch, gives Nicky some extra money. While they're on their way home, Gardner informs Nicky that his Aunt Margaret will be staying with them for a while to care for them. The family tries to adjust to their new life without Rose, so Margaret takes on Rose's role and tries to be a mother figure to Nicky. One morning, Andy calls Nicky to express his condolences regarding his mother's death and gives him a small snake, which delights the kid. Later that night, Nicky becomes terrified as he recalls the night his mother died. However, Margaret tucks him into bed and gives him a St. Patrick's necklace, saying it will protect him from all the evil that might arise. Gardner arrives at work, and his co-workers express their condolences. Meanwhile, a police officer calls Gardner's office and informs him that a few suspects have been found, and requests that Gardner come in and identify these people. He arrives at the police station to find Margaret and Nicky there as well. Gardner claims that if Nicky sees the suspects, he will be traumatized, so he's left outside. Then, as they assess the suspects, Gardner and Margaret declare that none of the men are the intruders. However, Nicky sneaks up on them and recognizes the two attackers. Just then, the lights turn on in the room and they discover that Nicky has snuck inside. Back home, Nicky confronts his father about failing to identify the attackers. Gardner, on the other hand, tries to convince him that he's mistaken and that the attackers were not there. He then leaves, warning Nicky not to tell Uncle Mitchell about what he just saw. In the meantime, the residents of Suburbicon continue to grow increasingly hostile toward the mayor's family. Every night, a crowd gathers around their house to protest that they live in the town. Margaret dyes her hair blonde to depict her sister, and she performs a slow dance with Gardner at home. Meanwhile, Mitchell talks with the church pastor about his growing concern since Nicky is now living without his mother. But the pastor says that they can't do anything unless the child confesses himself. One afternoon, Nicky comes back from playing baseball and hears some noises in the house. He grabs a knife and heads to the basement, only to discover Gardner and Margaret getting intimate with each other. Nicky then tries to contact his uncle Mitch to inform him of what he just saw, but the secretary informs him that he's busy in a meeting. Next, Lewis and Sloan confront Gardner at his workplace and beat him up. They're upset with Gardner for not keeping his end of the bargain and paying the money. They also scream at Gardner for bringing Nicky to the police station and demand that he keep Nicky under control. It turns out that Gardner staged the whole thing because he owed money to the mob after a failed business venture, and when he couldn't pay them back, he tried to file an insurance claim after Rose's death to make up the difference. Margaret was also involved in this plan because she was having an affair with Gardner. Later, Mitchell calls Gardner to inform him that someone has called his office with the name of his dead wife. He's now concerned and expresses his desire to see Nikki, but Gardner declines, saying that it's not a good time. Nikki and Andy watch as tensions rise between the mayor's family and the residents of Suburbicon, who taunt the family with offensive songs. At night, Gardner summons Nikki to his study for a conversation. He claims that Nikki has been very disobedient recently and will be sent away to a boarding school soon. This is the opportunity for Gardner to keep Nikki from discovering the truth, while also protecting him from the killers. The next day, Margaret is serving Mrs. Mayers at the checkout counter when her boss appears and announces that everything she has taken will be raised by $20 and advises her to shop elsewhere. Realizing that she's been treated unfairly, she leaves the supermarket without purchasing anything. She cuddles with her husband at night as a large crowd protests and sings outside their home. With tensions rising between Suburbicon residents and their new African-American neighbors, a charismatic insurance agent named Bud Cooper arrives on Gardner's doorstep one day. But upon realizing Gardner is not home, he starts questioning Margaret. Cooper informs her that they must clear some red flags before they can receive insurance funds. After some questioning, Cooper eventually admits that he suspects her and Gardner of Rose's murder. Margaret, on the other hand, is shaken by the accusations and chases him out of the house with a broom. In the meantime, Gardner has yet to pay the two murderers. Therefore, as a result, Sloan approaches Lewis at work and tells him that they must teach Gardner a lesson by murdering Margaret and Nikki. Lewis hesitates to kill two more people, but Sloan orders him to finish the job or he'll become a liability. Later that night, residents of the town gather outside the mayor's family home to harass them, and the situation escalates into a riot, with police forced to intervene. When Gardner gets home, Margaret tells him what happened with the claim investigator. Later, Cooper returns and asks Margaret for a cup of coffee before sitting comfortably on the couch. Then he informs Gardner that he's aware of the insurance fraud scheme and blackmails him into giving their entire insurance fund in exchange for his silence. Gardner threatens to kill him as well, but Cooper responds saying if anything happens to him, the insurance company will undoubtedly find out about the truth. Suddenly, Cooper turns red and clutches his throat as he realizes that Margaret mixed something in the coffee. When Gardner asks Margaret what she put in there, she says it's just a little lie. Cooper then runs to the street calling for help, but Gardner chases him down and bashes his head with a fire poker to finish him. In the meantime, Lewis and Sloan are sitting nearby watching Gardner kill a man. On the other hand, the riot outside Mayer's house becomes more violent as they smash their windows and set fire to their car. Gardner places the dead body in the trunk of his car and plans to dispose of it somewhere far away. He drives away with the body, while Sloan follows him. Lewis then goes to Gardner's house to kill Nikki and Margaret. After abandoning the car, Gardner rides back on his bicycle, and Sloan continues to follow him. Soon after, Nikki realizes what's going on and calls Uncle Mitch for help. Upon realizing this, Margaret cuts the phone line, and Nikki locks himself in his room. She then prepares a sandwich and milk infused with crushed up pills in order to poison Nikki, but he refuses to leave the room. Moments later, Lewis sneaks into the house, strangles Margaret from behind, and heads upstairs to put her dead body in bed. Then he makes his way to Nikki's room to kill him, but Mitch arrives just in time and shoots him dead. He hands Nikki a gun and tells him to hide in the closet and says he's always treated him as his son. Mitch then turns around, revealing a knife stabbed in his back from a fight with Lewis. As he breathes his last breath, he sits by Nikki's bed and calls the police. Sloan is following Gardner and informs him that a surprise awaits him at his home. Gardner becomes terrified and asks him what he did, just when Sloan is suddenly hit head-on by a fire truck. Eventually, as the leaked fuel catches fire, the car explodes and Sloan dies then and there. Gardner returns home to find the dead bodies of Margaret, Lewis, and Mitch. With them, he sees Nikki in the closet pointing a gun at him. Then he casually takes Nikki's gun and takes him to the dinner table. Gardner offers him the choice of going along with his plan to take the insurance money and flee to Aruba with him, or he will kill him and claim him as another victim of Lewis. He continues the conversation, confessing his crime and threatening Nikki while eating the poisoned sandwich. Then he tells Nikki to take his time and make a decision since it's a Sunday and they don't have anywhere to go. In the following scene, the riot is brought to an end and the emergency services arrive to help the mayor's family. The next morning, the mayor's family begins cleaning up the wreckage of last night's riot. The news crew interviews the residents, who blame the mayor's family for all the chaos. Meanwhile, Nicky sits calmly in front of the TV as his father's body is slumped over on the kitchen table. The movie ends with Nicky grabbing his baseball glove and going outside to play baseball with Andy. Hope you enjoyed the video. What was your favorite part? Do comment down below. Also, make sure to hit the like button as it helps the channel tremendously. And if you haven't done it already, consider subscribing. And if you want to continue with more recaps like this, check out this video now.